All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff, probably my most requested book to review in the last 6 months. People have been begging me to review this because if you've watched my channel, you know I've already reviewed Nevernight. I've read this entire trilogy over here. I've left a review of Nevernight on my channel, and you know Jay Kristoff and this trilogy is one of my favorite things that's come out in the last 5 years. So, I was excited to get to this one. So let's talk about this book in depth, and we're going to start with just the absolute first thing that I always start with, and that's the cover, the aesthetics of the book itself. You know I love graphic design, cover illustration, and how books are packaged, and I got to tell you, I haven't seen such a beautiful book since, Brandon Sanderson's gorgeous Stormlight Archives books were put together by Tor. This book is absolutely amazing, and I'm going to go through it detail. I'm going to go through the details of what we got. Well, first of all, the cover is astonishingly flashy and catchy with a great illustration by Jason Chan. Now let's take the cover off. I mean, it's a great cover. Let's just take it off for now. We'll put it back on in a minute. But let's look at the book itself. Now, I got the Barnes & Noble version of the book, and I suggest you people get the Barnes & Noble version rather than order it from Amazon, because I got the Barnes & Noble versions of these 3 books also. Barnes & Noble does a special edition that's got extra artwork, and the books are all signed. So let's show you. This is the Barnes & Noble special edition signed copy. Just the same as I showed you that the my Nevernight trilogy is also the special edition signed versions. Each one of them first edition signed copy. So Barnes & Noble, get them from Barnes & Noble. That's my first recommendation, okay? Because all of the Jay Kristoff books from Barnes & Noble end up being signed. Just going through it. I mean, this is important. I mean, if you want to really have a great book collection, this is why I'm going through this step by step. Where did I put it? Oh, there it is. And this one, of course, is the Barnes & Noble special edition that has been signed, like I just showed you. But let's go through some other details of this book that make it just beautiful and gorgeous. First of all, we've got these end papers, great illustrations. If you've got the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson, they do the same thing on the they do the same exact thing. So and it only gets better, folks. This only gets better. So we get these great inside interior illustrations by these are the ones on the back flap. And they are by an artist named Bon Orthwick, I think is his name. Bon Orthwick. They're just beautiful. They're just absolutely great. And it doesn't end there. Inside this book this book is just chock full of these Ben Orthwick illustrations. Look at that beautiful stained glass window, the swordsman, the person looking at the artwork. This has probably got 30 just absolutely beautiful illustrations throughout it. And I can't tell you how much that just adds to the dynamite look of the entire thing. I just can't get over how beautiful this book is to just have in your collection. Like I said, the Barnes & Noble, get the Barnes & Noble version because it's got the extra features. We're not done. We're not done. I can show you every illustration inside, and they're all just fantastic. We're not done. There's still other things inside this book that we need to take a look at. And the other thing that I like was this might be the best fantasy map I have ever seen in a book. This was done by someone named Virginia Allen, who maybe she did the Nevernight ones, I don't know, but she did this one, and oh my lord, this just makes my mouth water. I want to explore every single place on this map. And then we've got these 4 houses, these 4 houses that play a huge part in the story. The blood Chastain, the blood I got to take my glasses off. Blood Illen, Blood Voss, Blood Divok, and Blood Chastain. These 4 houses with their family crests up in the corners, which play, and then just the map. Oh my lord. Okay, so that's just the physical copy. Now, where did I put the cover? Let's put this cover back on. Let's talk about the book itself. So when I launched into this book not knowing anything about it. All I knew about it was that Jay Kristoff, especially in this trilogy back here, blew me away with his writing style. He's got a purposefully flashy writing style where you can tell that the author is just having fun writing the books. His prose is purposefully wordy. It's purposefully, he really wants you to see what the author's voice in the storytelling itself. And a lot of authors don't want their voice in the storytelling. They just want the story to speak for itself. But with Jay Kristoff, you get the personality of the author is just, he's putting it right there in the story for you with his words, with his penmanship, with the word choices and everything else, the humor, the verboseness of the words, the garrulousness of the words, the flashy prose. It is all there. And that's what I loved about this story. And now this is one of those, it's kind of like, a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people don't like flashy writing. A lot of people don't like over-the-top writing. In this series, we got that. We're going to talk about the writing in this series and how it differs slightly from this trilogy up here. But just slightly. Again, Jay Kristoff's using his vocabulary, his word choices, and his writing style, his very flashy writing style, to a purpose in this book also, but it's different than what we get up here, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. That's the only thing I knew about Jay. I knew that I loved this trilogy. I did not know. I didn't read. When I started this, I didn't read the inside flap. I didn't want to know anything. I assumed it was about vampires. Didn't want to know anything. I just wanted to read the story. Within the first couple chapters, I pinned this down to, this is reminding me a whole hell of a lot of Interview with a Vampire and The Name of the Wind, in that there's a vampire being interviewed in this book. Gabriel is our main guy. He's the last of the Silver Saints, and the Silver Saints were sort of a group of crusaders that used to fight the vampires and keep them at bay and the magic and all this stuff like that. And now he's the last one, and he's been put in prison for a murder of some sort that we don't know about. And now there's a vampire that comes down into his prison cell to interview him and to write down his life story. The vampire wants, and the vampire's name is on the top of him, the Marquis Jane Francois of the House Chastain. That's what I remember. I got it. Okay, so the vampire comes down, and he's a very slick, very vampire-y guy, And that's another thing I wanted to tell. This is the most Gothic book. This is a Gothic book written by a goth. I almost expected My Chemical Romance to just show up and start singing Helena in the middle of the... that's what I was expecting. In fact, I felt like I should goth myself up with some paint my face white and do some black guy liner as I was reading this, because this literally is the most Gothic story I have ever read. Partly because the illustrations just make it seem like you are living in the most Gothic universe that there's ever been. I just show you another one. It's just beautiful. These beautiful illustrations. I should just do nothing but show you those. I dig all this stuff. Anyway, I feel like this was a cross between The Name of the Wind, and that's what we were going for. That's where we left off. Interview with a Vampire. Although this is an interview with a vampire. This is the vampire interviewing the Silver Saint who used to kill vampires, and the Silver Saint Gabriel is now locked in a cell because of a murder that we know nothing about at this point, and he's and the vampire wants to force the story out of Gabriel, and Gabriel is very hesitant to tell the story. Now, this is also comparable to Name of the Wind, because now we get the entire book told from the perspective of the main character, Gabriel, just like Kvothe in The Name of the Wind is telling us the story. But there's some differences here, folks. There's a lot of differences. And this is going back to the prose thing. Now, this story is told, I mean, everything's in quotations because Gabriel is speaking the entire story. This is a conversation. This whole book is a conversation between Gabriel and the Marquis Jean-Francois of the House Chastain, the guy who is interviewing him. And this whole book is just a conversation between these two. So everything is in quotations. That threw me off for a little bit. I was like, why is everything in quotation? Even parts that aren't supposed to be in quotations are in quotation. Well, I was like, oh, it's because this guy's telling the story to another guy. And every now and then, the dude that's listening to the story will interrupt the story and like make a comment and say, well, that doesn't make sense, or I don't think you're explaining that right, or you're not telling the story like I think it should be told. And so it's just, I've never seen a book set up quite like that. You know, in The Name of the Wind, we know Kvothe is telling the story, but it just jumps to a straight narration. You know, he's like, and then here goes my story, and then we go to a straight narration. This is actually a conversation. The entire thing is a conversation between the interviewer and the interviewee, with a little bit of back and forth. And sometimes the interviewee, you know, the guy that's interviewing our Silver Saint he doesn't speak for sometimes chapters at a time. And then once in a while, he'll throw in a comment. Now, the reason I think that this changes the prose is because the prose in this trilogy here, which was very garrulous and wordy and purposefully flashy, has to be reined in just a little bit, because we're getting the story now told not from the voice of Jay Kristoff himself, but from the voice of Gabriel, the character, who is sort of channeling his inner Jay Kristoff. I mean, you can see Jay Kristoff's writing style and voice is sort of being injected into Gabriel's, the way he tells his story. However, it's reined in quite a bit in comparison to what we get this. However, that being said, it's still absolutely beautiful writing. I mean, and if you're Gabriel and you're telling a story in a prison cell you're reluctantly telling a story in a prison cell to this guy, this vampire, your enemy, he does a very detailed job. I mean, 800 pages of him conversating with this dude, and it's just, and the writing is magnificent. Another thing that I wanted to talk about with the Gothic, I mean, we haven't even gotten to the plots of the story, but I'm not going to really do that. I'll probably just read the flap at the end of this review. But this reminds me of Name of the Wind, Interview with a Vampire, and on top of that, the movie Excalibur. And let me explain this, because this is almost like a retelling of the Arthurian legend, because we've got the Forever King, we've got Holy Grails, quests for Holy Grails, we've got silver that kills the vampires, we've got all these things, all this stuff that's sort of steeped in our own real-world mythology surrounding vampires and King Arthur and that whole story. So there's just a little bit of Excalibur in this. Not only that, but this is the world, the Gothic world that Jay Kristoff has built is kind of a medieval knights in shining armor, sword-wielding, battle-axe-wielding, horse-riding guys going to battle. There's a lot of sort of Braveheart-esque battles in here that are described in great gory detail. Oh, just perfect. Not only that, but there's also pistols that shoot silver bullets. Can't forget that. And then we get into my favorite parts of the story were the flashbacks, because Gabriel is flashing back to some of the times he flashes back to when he was a young child and then a little older, sort of as a young person, sort of getting recruited into the Silver Saints, and then sort of later on he's sort of re-recruited into the Silver. But anyway, I love the scenes where he's younger and sort of naively finding his way through this really brutal medieval Gothic world, and especially with his sisters. I love the scenes where he talks about his family and his sisters. I love that. So that is where we're going to kind of stop with me just gushing about this. I'm just going to read the inside flap so you kind of have somewhat of an idea what this book might be about, because I've rattled on for 15 minutes here and haven't really said much. But let's just read this and then I'll give you my final. Okay. From holy cup comes holy light. The faithful hand sets world aright, and the 7 martyrs sight. Here mere man shall end this endless night. It has been 27 long years since the last sunrise. For nearly 3 decades, vampires have waged war against humanity, building their eternal empire, even as they tear down our own. Now only a few tiny sparks of light endure in a sea of darkness. Gabriel de Leon is a silver saint, a member of a holy brotherhood dedicated to defending realm and church from the creatures of the night. But even the silver order could not stem the tide once daylight failed us, and now only Gabriel remains. Imprisoned by the very monsters he vowed to destroy, the last silver saint is forced to tell his story, a story of legendary battles and forbidden love, of faith lost and friendship won, of wars and blood and the forever king, and the quest for humanity's last remaining hope, the Holy Grail. So, I mean, it's called The Empire of the Vampire, but there's so much more going on. I mean, vampires are certainly the main focus of the story, and they're badasses. I mean, they are just the Gothic, beautiful badasses that we want. And we've also got sort of this medieval, Braveheart-esque, bloody battle book. So, I am giving this one... I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. I know I gave this a 10 out of 10. I do like this. So far, I like this one slightly better. And I will get to reviewing these two in a minute. But Empire of the Vampire is still 9.5 out of 10. Especially, who wouldn't want such a gorgeous, gorgeous book on their shelf with all of the amenities that come with it? Oh, Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff, one of my favorite new writers. This is one of my favorite new trilogies of all time. And this thing, I think, is going to have some sequels. God, I hope so. And I hope they're as beautiful as this one.